do this is that there's 12 of you who were chosen in the application process. And we so appreciate all of you. If you entered and weren't chosen, sorry we couldn't choose all of you, but it really had some great applications with great ideas. So, and maybe as you listen in, you'll be able to craft your proposal and your idea and improve your idea. And who knows, you know, I'd like to do this fairly often so we can get more books by women our age published, right? Because we got a lot to say. Okay, I'm going to, for the recording, so there's 12 of you who you know who you are, and you're going to be participating. And then the others, if you weren't chosen, if you can just keep yourself muted. The others of you, when I introduce you, you can unmute yourself, the participants. And I'm going to introduce Sarah, and then I'll introduce all of you based on alphabetical order, because I don't know how else to do it. Then I'd like for the 12 participants, we'll each have a chance to ask one question, and we'll go down the list. And after that, if we have time, I'll call on you to ask various questions based on what's relevant or something we haven't covered. So the participants, you are free to add any questions that if you asked one, but you have others, you can add them in the chat and I can get to them later. So let's see here. I want to find, I guess, Bonnie Baisley. I don't know if she's here. I haven't seen her. So let's get Lucy. Well, first of all, let me introduce the woman of the hour, Sara Nelson, who is, you know, she's a rock star in the publishing world. She's the executive editor of Harper Collins, a major title publishing company, and she acquires fiction and nonfiction with an emphasis on historical fiction. Her authors include New York Times bestselling author Jenna Bloom, Simon Winchester, and Simon Winchester. She's also the editor of that book we've all read, right? The Tattooist of Auschwitz, amazing book. Before that, she was the editorial director for books and Kindle at Amazon. While at Amazon, she raised the profile of its editorial program, launched the Amazon Book Review, and managed a team of editors and writers. Before that, she was more in the magazine world as the books editor at the Oprah magazine, where she started the Oprah Book Club. She was an editor-in-chief of Publishers Weekly, and she's the author of so many books, so little time. Don't we all feel that way? So welcome, Sarah. We're so happy.
Everybody. Thank you. This is
so happy for you to be here.
Sorry, what did you say?
I said we're so happy that you're doing this for us.
Thank you. Thank you. I look forward to this every year. So, so here I am. I mean, I guess Jeannie's going to introduce each of you, and I look forward to taking your questions.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, Lucy Frost, can you unmute yourself and say hi?
Hello.
Hello. Lucy is from San Antonio, and she's working on a comic novel called The Great Resignation, or as a working title. And Lucy writes a lot of humor pieces for us. She's, I just think she's one of the funniest people ever. So that's just and she's really good in a crunch in a Paris train station. That's all.
That's skills.
That's skill. You got skills there, girl. Okay, so Lucy, we'll come back to you, but Tatrice Harrison, where are you, Tatrice? Do you want to unmute and say hi?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Tatrice. How are you?
Well, but it's Tatrice.
How do you say it?
Tatrice.
Tatrice. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I was having it rhyme with my middle name, which is Patrice. So it's Tatrice. Very good. And you're in New Orleans. Lucky you. And Tatrice has written a book, which is just fascinating to me, called, she's written one book called Bitch Hunt, about female Black attorneys who've been attacked and who have to rise to the challenge to face off those attacks. She's got working on another book about corrupted judges. So this is, I'm sure a big topic. So we will look forward to hearing from you, Taytrice. And then, thank you, Sadie Horton. Where's Sadie?
I'm right up here.
Hi, Sadie. Sadie's from Brooklyn, and Sadie, I was taken by your idea. It's a novel with a sliding doors kind of thing, but it involves abortion and themes of romantic and filial love, self-determination, and the way in which different choices can deeply impact a life. So I'm really thrilled to hear more about that. So welcome, Sadie. And then Nancy Jane, am I pronouncing this right? Jane Chill, Nancy Jane.
Yeah, you got it.
From
You got it.
Woodstock. From Woodstock, and this is creative. She has an idea for creative nonfiction about feminism. It's in progress. The name is Feminist Ecstasy, Porn, Pleasure, and the Politics of Parity. It's about feminism, sexuality, gender parity, and pornography. So it's going to be interesting to talk about that. We always like a little sex in there. Susan Lipinski is calling in. Where's Susan? Hey,
You see me?
Hi, Susan. How are you?
Hey,
Susan's
how are you?
staying up really late. She's over in the UK.
It's 11:30 here.
Well, we appreciate it. And she just wrote about the loss of the Queen. She was there and she wrote for us about everything that was going on when she found out about that. She has a memoir of interconnected stories that kind of all based on a summer house in Maine with, I love the part of the family being silver spoon and part of this family being plastic spoon. So
Right. You've got it.
I can't wait to hear more about that. So just thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Yvonne Liu is from Rancho Palo Verde, California. Where's Yvonne?
I am here and just
Hi.
a delight to be here. Thank you so much.
Yes, and you have an incredible memoir called I Talked to My Mother in the Clouds about your journey from Hong Kong to the US and your biological and your adoptive mother figure in from what it seems, right?
Right. What it is, it's about my journey overcoming a traumatic childhood filled with mental illness and domestic violence. And it's also about throwing off the shackles of shame, decades of cultural shame about all these different issues. Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you. Welcome. Okay, Liz Lufkin is from San Francisco. Where's Liz?
Right here.
Hey, Liz, how are you?
Good.
Okay, you have a really cool idea for a novel, and I'll let you tell more about it when you start talking. But it's about what a wife after she passes away, watching what happens among her girlfriends, trying to get her husband. So anyway, I'm really interested to hear about that. So Liz, thank you for coming. And Maggie Marshall from Asheville, North Carolina. And
hello. I
have a special relationship with Maggie because she's my realtor in Asheville, found me a house. And her novel, it's called The Gondolier's Wife. And it's a dual timeline mystery with elements of both a contemporary crime novel and historical fiction. So we look forward to hearing more about that. And then we have Terry Scrotch from Lano, Texas. Where are you, Terry? Is she on? I think I saw you, Terry.
Oh, that's me.
Oh.
With the palm trees.
Terry, I love this little look here.
Last name is pronounced Schroth.
Scroth?
Schroth, like Schultz, only Schroth.
Schroth. Okay. I'm not going to say your last name. How about that?
That's fine. Nobody tries.
And you have you're in Lano, and you have a romantic action adventure drama with a mix of Brigadoon, Sweet Home Alabama and The Searchers. So this is going to be interesting to hear about. I love how imaginations work here. Okay, and Liz Visser from Kent, Washington. Where are you, Liz?
I'm up here.
Okay,
here.
yes, yes. I think I don't see you on screen, but go ahead. You have a yours is a mainstream fiction, and it's about you say it's wild, about the Pacific Crest Trail, hiking the Pacific Trail, crossed with the Sixth Sense. So we and I know it has to do with veterans of the Iraq War. So we're really anxious to hear more about that. And then we have Amy Bricount White from Arlington, Virginia. Where are you, Amy? I see her.
There I am. Hi, how are you? Good to
Hi.
see you.
Yeah, great. I'm glad you're here. So this is really interesting. You have it's called Unrooted is your name of the working title, right? And it's a taking the Hamlet, but putting it in modern days with a woman, right? Of the girl is Hannah instead of Hamlet. So there's that's so incredible, that imagination. I just got like, wow, when I read some of this, I'm like, this is really cool. So we're missing one person, but if she comes in, we'll introduce her. But so now you can know who a little bit about each book project. And I thought we just move this right along. And I thought, Lucy, since you're first on the alphabetical list, if you want it, so everybody have at least one question ready, and make it short, remember, because we really want to make best use of this time. And you can also write questions in the chat for the participants. And if we have extra time, I'll call on you to ask that question if it hasn't been answered already. So Lucy, do you want to get us started with the questions?
Yes, that sounds great. I'd love to. I'm here if you can't see me there. So I am writing, as Jeannie said, humorous fiction about post-retirement life. And I was wondering if you could give me any guidance on the query letter. I can't figure out what to call the genre. Is it, it would maybe be women's fiction, but that's kind of an outdated term. Just call it fiction and let the query speak for itself. Call it, you're not going to call it chick lit, call it literary fiction, but it's not really literary, and book club might be presumptuous to call it book club or upmarket. Think a Heartburn by Nora Ephron, Otessa Moshfe's My Year of Rest and Relaxation, sort of dark humor along sort of that vector.
Okay. It sounds great. I'm really curious to know more about this, because I would just call it, it kind of doesn't matter, if you get a publisher, the publisher will decide sort of how they're going to position it. So they'll decide what to call it or what the BISAC code could be. It's the BISAC code is just the way they describe it and where it gets filed in the system, in bookstores and online. But women's fiction, I don't think it's presumptuous to say, it's its own category to say upmarket women's fiction. I personally hate the expression, for women of a certain age. It's like, I get it if it's about retirement. I would say it's, upmarket women's fiction about what the hell happens to your lives when you retire or something like that. I don't think you need to create a category called retirement fiction. I think that's gonna put off more people than it's gonna entice, even though all of us in this room are in that position, more or less. I'm guessing. If somebody said to me, this is a book of women's retirement fiction, I'd be like, ew, right? So I don't think you need to say that. I think humorous fiction, fiction / humor, fiction / women's fiction / humor. I mean, I do think the proposal should speak for itself, but if you need to make that kind of definition somewhere, that's what I would do. An upmarket book club, I mean, it's like urban women's book club, but I find that to be a little obnoxious. So, so I would just say upmarket women's fiction, book club fiction.
Great, thank you so much. And are we concerned about the term women's fiction anymore?
Not
I've heard
really.
some stuff about that.
I don't. I mean, you could just say upmarket book club fiction, which is sort of a way of saying it without. I mean, most fiction is read by women, and if you say upmarket book club fiction, I know plenty of men in book clubs, but they're mostly not, for the most part, not reading fiction. So you can take it out and just say upmarket book club fiction. I never did and never would use the term chick lit, which I find obviously demeaning and was demeaning the first day it was coined. But women's fiction, it doesnn't bother me. If it makes you, if it's makes you a little squishy, then I wouldn't say it. You don't need to. I mean, the truth is, most fiction is not written by women, but women read much more fiction than nonfiction, and so I think it'll be clear from the proposal or from the first chapter what the book, who the book's going to appeal to. And if you do say Nora Ephron, I mean, that is the thing to sort of say now. I'm a little anxious about that just because, would that we were all Nora Ephron, that's kind of the.
Yeah, I wouldn't use her as a comp.
Right.
And I probably wouldn't use My Year of Rest and Relaxation as a comp either, but I
No,
figured.
I don't know if I consider that a comedy exactly.
Right.
So that's why I wouldn't use that. But Eleanor Lipman is somebody, if you know her, who is kind of, a comp for a certain kind of humorous fiction. There are lots and lots of people. To compare yourself to what you want is somebody else to compare you to Nora Ephron, like some reviewer or blurber or somebody like that.
Mhm.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, and Trees, what about what's the kind of question do you have you want for Sarah?
So one of my questions was, working on my second book, and when I worked on my first book, I had a developmental editor, but I wanted to find more of a female developmental editor. How would I go about trying to find somebody that could work with me in regards to making sure that the second book is polished?
It is polished. So
Yeah.
you said developmental editor. So you mean before the book is sold or published, and that's to sort of help you put it together, right? Smooth it out, help you put it together, right?
Correct.
I think you should have a woman. Did you have one on your previous book or no?
No, it was kind of wind up using.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you, Tetris. Could you lean closer to my phone?
Yeah, I said fortunately I wasn't able to find one, so I wound up working with a guy, not a woman.
Right. Well, I think that there are a number of editors, of freelance editors, people who, who do this for a living as a freelancer. I actually kill me for saying this, but my sister lives in New Orleans and does exactly that. And she has a whole network of people that she works with and knows of other editors. So at some point, I would be happy to put you in touch with her to see. I don't know how much work she's taking on right now, but she might be able to point you in the direction. I think that there are, I'm sure you can go on the internet and type in, developmental editor, but you won't know who you're getting, right? So
that's why I didn't know if there was a system or somewhere point me in a direction that to ensure that I'm actually getting somebody that knows what they're talking about and not just blowing smoke up my what.
Right, exactly. Well, exactly. And I think There's a woman here I know in New York named Susan Shapiro, who does that. And, you know, I think the way it works is, you know, you would talk to this person and then you would send them a kind of précis of what the novel was, or, you know, where you were with it. And then you both would decide whether that person had the right sensibility, you know, you know, and I don't know how they charge or what they, you know, how it works, but, I mean, I think, we should be able to get you, sorry, someone's interrupted me, that we should be able to get you a list of people to start with when you're in.
And Sarah, just as a follow-up on that, are there different types of editors? I mean, there are some editors who will work with, I mean, they'll go in there and just do structure and narrative line, and then there's some that just do, you know, top editing. And
Right,
you
right.
got, I guess you have to know what it is you really need, or
Right,
what they can
right.
really, what they sell
Mhm.
at.
Right. I mean, there's a group of women editors that I know here who are about in our age group, who, you know, used to work at publishing houses and were, you know, left it mostly because they were not interested in the kind of fray of the publishing house, but were really interested in the books, and they hire themselves out to do everything from, I mean, for the most part, you know, a line editor, I mean, what I think, and again, I'm not positive, but what I think most people want, or most people need, whether they know it or not, is a developmental editor, as you say, Tetris, that, you know, somebody who's going to say, you know, the pacing is wrong and you need to beef up this character. And I mean, you know, and I find that that's the most what I do in my work. I mean, I can send a lot of books to the copy editor to, you know, to fix, you know, repetitions or whatever. It's the putting it all together stuff that's hard.
Yeah,
Mhm.
good.
So, I mean, when you're ready, I mean, and Jeannie, this is actually something we could talk about, to have as a resource, is to have a kind of list of names or a group of people who would maybe do some sort of event like this, so, you know,
Oh,
tell themselves, and you know, so there'd be work in it for them and also a way to introduce people.
right.
So,
No,
but we can talk about that later.
That's a great idea, and I'm sure that we can get, I mean, that's how cool is it that your sister's in New Orleans, so it
Yeah.
does this, it's great. Yeah. Okay, Sadie, from Brooklyn, what's your question?
I have so many questions, but I guess the obvious one is for a first-time author with no previous publishing experience. How do you get an in with an agent? I have so many friends who have books that are ready, that they're querying, and they can't even get agents right now to, you know, to take them on. I've heard interviews with agents who say they don't take any submissions anymore. They only take submissions from people recommended to them by other authors in their list or friends, or, you know, so I think the climate has gotten quite heated up quite a bit. I don't know if it was COVID, but I'm just curious as to sort of what you say the path, what suggestions you might have for someone like me, to just get, you know, get in with someone.
Well, I have heard that during COVID that agents were just, sorry, you know, inundated, and also like everybody else, you know, they had kids at home, or they had, you know, all kinds of dread, so that there was like a period of time where people didn't take on new clients. I don't know if that's lifted or not. I mean, I do know, you know, the big agents, you know, stop taking submissions at a certain point in their careers because they feel like, you know, they're so busy servicing the people that they have.
Mhm.
One way is a recommendation of a writer who either goes to that agent or is known to that agent. And the other is to look at, I would not, you don't have to be a New York agent, but the reality is that's probably, with a few exceptions, the best way to go. Because those people are going to be known to the publishers. I mean, not 100%, but if you were looking for a mainstream publisher, you probably want a New York agent. But the other thing is there are new agents coming up all the time, and they tend to be younger. And I'm going to see the problem. It's like you're writing a book that's by and about and for, 60 somethings, and some 25-year-old is going to pass judgment on it. I mean, I get the problem, believe me. But I do think that there are people who are new to agenting. There are a lot of editors I know who have left editing and are agents. So, I mean, I would not start with the head person at ICM, right, or the head person at William Morris. But I would look around. I mean, the best way to start thinking of who your agent should be is obviously just to look at books by people you like, books that you love, and look in the acknowledgments and see who the agents are. And the agent may be the head person at ICM, so you're not going to probably go to that person, but then you go on the website and you see sort of the more, quote, lesser people at ICM, and you start querying them. I mean, it is a process. But the sort of newer and the agent, the hungrier, right? Because they can't afford to just publish people they already know. So, but I would really try to look at agents who handle books that are like your book. They're humorous novels, or they're serious memoir, or they're, whatever.
And I do remember there was a time that when I was first in New York that you could get an agent really easily, but then it seems like as the publishing industry has changed, it's like getting the agent is almost the hardest part. I
don't know exactly. I mean, it seems to me that there are more agents than there ever were before, but then again, there are probably more people writing books than there ever were before. So it's it evens out. I'm really not sure, except I'm assuming it's because of volume that people are not taking submissions.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, Nancy Jane Chill from Woodstock.
Okay, so my question is about pitching. I had heard that if I pitch as a hybrid memoir, that will absolutely sink it. And the book kind of it's conversation. What I'm hoping is that it will be conversationally academic, but it will also have reflections on my own experience, because and that's a secondary question: how much do I highlight my experience as a stripper and a failed porn star, which is where you get the hybrid part.
Wait, so where do you get the hybrid part?
Well, it's really about pornography and feminism and gender equity in the politics.
Right.
And it basically stemmed from when I found out about Candida Royale's death. She was a porn superstar.
Mhm.
And it made me begin to look at my own experience and what I had tried to do in the 70s, early 70s, and how I failed terribly at it. But she was able to embody what I was trying. And there are a lot of feminist porn stars out there now. And so I'm going to be looking at the whole area of feminist pornography and gender equity, but also with reflections on my own experience and evolution in terms of my thinking.
Right. So it's hybrid in that it is personal story, also melded in with the politics.
Correct.
Cultural history of
Correct.
sex work.
Right.
Porn stars and sex work.
Right.
Right. I mean, I don't think that hybrid sinks anything. I mean, I personally think it makes it more interesting. Because what I think is wrong with a lot of memoirs that I see proposals for, and even some that I see published, it's all, I had this experience, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me. And, if you're Mary Carr, that's pretty interesting maybe, but for most of us, it needs to be rounded out. Otherwise it's just, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened.
Yeah.
So I mean, one of my favorite books that I published in the last couple of years is a book called why am I blanking on the exact title? Dorothy Soames, The Secret Life of Dorothy Soames, which was a book about a memoir / social history of the Foundling Hospital in London. And it was this woman, the author discovered very late in her mother's life that her mother was not who she had said she was. And she had always portrayed herself as a great English lady, and they did not have a good relationship, and because her mother was very imperious and controlling and all of these things. And so it's sort of started off as a story about a woman who had a bad relationship with her mother, and then she discovers that the mother was not who she said she was, and had actually grown up as a foundling in the Foundling Hospital in England. So she went back to find out what the Foundling Hospital was all about. So she went there and she investigated it, and she went into the history of it, so that it was back and forth, so that when the mother would behave a certain way, now the daughter was able to say, oh, I wonder if it gave her more understanding into why her mother was the way she was.
So
it was really pretty terrific. So, I mean, it was unusual in that it was, both a history of a Foundling Hospital and this woman's story. And I mean, it was not, it did not take the world by storm exactly, but it had a nice solid readership and got some nice coverage. So
I'm really going to be looking a lot about the pornography world and its evolution. And I've made a number of contacts with feminist pornographers who are very excited about the book.
Right. Well, there are people who have written them on this a little bit. Lily Barana.
Right.
Do you know her work?
Yeah.
And you do. Yeah. And there are others too. She's the one I'm first thinking of. I mean, so, it's sort of sex work as feminist theory kind of thing. I mean, it's been done, but the whole thing is the presentation. I mean, you'll all hear me say this today and whenever, that it's like you could have a great story, but it needs to be presented well. And I like the hybrid presentation generally. So
that's good. That's good news.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, Yvonne, what's your question? Oh, wait, I think you just, yeah, there you go.
there she is.
Okay. So anyways, my memoir is about how I overcame a childhood as a newborn abandoned at day 4 in a stairwell in Hong Kong, and then lived in an orphanage for 15 months, and then was adopted by a severely mentally ill woman. But this is not trauma porn. And so my HuffPost adoption essay, Why I Kept My Adoption a Secret for Over 60 Years, was read by over 1.5 people. And so what people worldwide have told me who have read my pieces in the New York Times, Salon, and Newsweek is that my stories resonate with them. Writing about adoption, about mental illness, domestic violence, they feel that I am giving them a voice. They said they cried, but ultimately found hope. So I've heard that memoirs should be focused on a short period of time. Most of the drama and the trauma is through the 20s. Can I focus on that, but then also do some of the 30s and flash forward to the 40s, where I finally separate myself from my toxic mother? And then also, in general, what is the market for people who want to write a memoir who are not Mary Carr?
Well, I mean, I think I use Mary Carr as an example because I mean, she is great at it. there are others who are also very good at it. And so I mean, I think you've already had, it sounds like, some great response to your very personal writing. So it doesn't seem like very much of a transition from those pieces to a full-length book about it. So I think whatever you're doing, you should continue to do, I would say.
Right.
And
But is there a certain amount of, are memoirs normally focused on a certain amount of time, like or can it span a lifetime, or how?
they're all different. I mean, some memoirs take a single moment and kind of swing out from that. I mean, The Glass Castle was that way. Mary Corb was to some extent that way, the Liars Club. I mean, I still remember that tutu burning as she was cooking, and that's, I mean, I don't know, it's 30 years ago I read that, or 20 years. It's a lot of books ago, as I say. So I don't know. I mean, some books, some memoirs just recount a certain period of years that sort of fit thematically on the subject. I mean, Adrienne Berger's really wonderful book called Wild Game was focused on the years that was really a memoir of her really nutty relationship with her mother. Nutty's too nice a word for it, really, but it all stemmed from a moment when the author was like 14, and it went to about, I mean, a little bit into the present, but mostly it was about the teen years. So it just depends.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, Liz Lufkin, Liz from San Francisco.
Oh, hey, let me unmute. I'm going to backtrack to the agent question. And I know you talked a lot about this when you did this course last year. I saw the YouTube version of that. It was super helpful. Short of like cold calling people or cold emailing, are there other ways to meet people, if you will? Any other techniques?
Sure. There are writers festivals. I mean, they cost something. I don't know. I mean, there's the Aspen Words, there's the Maui Writers Festival there. And I don't know how you go about applying to any of those, but if you, I mean, you have to send something in, you have to be chosen and so on, but, and it costs something. So, you may get there and, I mean, I have participated in some of those as a publishing person, and there are, agents there, and they, read your proposal, or they read 20 pages of your book, or they do whatever. And that is where agents, especially newer, younger, but also just plain newer agents, go to find people. The other thing is to publish an excerpt or an essay or whatever in a literary journal. Not so easy, but because agents read those too, and then you have something to send and say, I was published in the Swanee Review. Well, an agent's going to look at that. They may not take you on anyway, but they're going to look at that. But I mean, I would look at writers' festivals. Any writers who have agents, obviously, be very helpful.
Okay. Are the just kind of related to that, like the writers, not just the festivals, but the workshops and applying to those, for instance?
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
sure. You mean like Iowa Writers Workshop?
Yeah, which I know is a stretch, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, you never know, but yeah, and there are lots and lots of them. There are low residency writers programs, and, all over the country. I mean, I just bought a little while ago, bought a book that's going to come out in February, I think. Maybe a couple of publication dates all screwed up because I bought it a while ago, but that came to me because the author, there's a guy, writer, a New Orleans writer, Patrice, named Madison Smart Bell, wrote a wonderful book, a series of books about New Orleans. But anyway, he is a professor and a part-time agent. So this was somebody who was in his class. But then he send it out as an agent. I don't know how that works legally or whatever way. I didn't care. I liked the book and I bought the book, and it's very exciting. I mean, it was really, off the beaten track.
And what's the name of the book and when's it coming
Called
out?
Bookworm,
Bookworm.
and it's coming out in, I believe, February, and I'm doing it as paperback original, so it's on Harper Perennial. And it's black comedy, or I call it a black comedy with heart. It's about a woman who's obsessed with books, who reads all the time, who basically lives her life through books. She imagines herself in the books, how she would respond to this character in this book. She just lives completely in her head. And she decides that she's madly in love with a guy she meets. She didn't even meet, she sees across the room at a cafe because he's reading the same book she's reading. So she constructs in her mind this whole relationship, and various things happen, but she's got to try to get rid of her husband so she can be with this guy. So she starts imagining ways she could off her husband, she could kill her husband based on famous murder scenes, not so famous, but literary murder scenes, from being Smiley's poisoned pickles to, getting hit by a train to all this, but it's all in her head, sort of. That's what it's about.
And what's the author's name? What's the author's name?
The author's name, why am I, this is so.
Okay, that's okay.
This.
Robin Yeatman?
Robin Yeatman, thank you very much. Do not tell her I forgot her name. It just went out of my head.
Well, I want Robin Yeatman.
Yeah, it is truly bizarre. She imagines this affair with the guy, and anyway, there's just a lot of, it's dark. It's pretty dark.
Oh my gosh.
It reminds me of a book in some ways in tone, called My Sister the Serial Killer, if anybody read that, which was a black comedy about, so it's definitely dark, but really hilarious. And since it's about books, it's like really,
yeah, it's like little catnip there. Okay, Maggie, what do you want to ask Sarah?
Hey, so this actually piggybacks a little bit, or the beginning of it, on Liz's question, and also Sarah, what you were saying about writers' conferences and things. For the last 2 years, I've been going to Grub Street, or to Muse in the Marketplace, which is Grub Street in Boston's conference. And in that one, you get to meet with an agent. They read 20 pages. Then you have a 20-minute meeting with them, which is awesome. And my question is actually to do with comps, because I had the good luck of meeting with quite a few agents, and most of them, they all said they wanted to see the full manuscript. They liked the pages. Their concern was how to comp it to then sell it to an editor. And so as an editor, I was curious. As Jeannie mentioned, I'm split timeline 2 genres. And so this question's a little specific, but hopefully it'll be helpful to everybody. Would you rather, in that case, I was pulling comps that are similar structure to the book, like Kate Morton's The Lake House, or Tess Gerritsen's The Bone Garden. They're dual timeline, crime in the modern component, historical fiction. But those are older, and nobody seems to be writing that particular structure right now. So one of them suggested maybe doing more of pull one comp from one genre and one comp from another. So then I end up with something like Michael Connelly's Detective Renee Ballard meets Alexander Chee's The Queen of the Night. Does that seem too crazy, or does it seem like it would make sense for you as an editor if an agent pitched you that?
This is a good question, and it's kind of it's the universal question. I mean, I talk about comps all day long when I'm, pitching something in an editorial meeting, when I'm talking to the marketing people. But I kind of hate them. I sometimes get frustrated because I think, well, it's not like exactly like this. One of the things we have to do at Harper, and I think it's true at all the big publishers, is, find comps and then say how many copies of the book, and how well reviewed those books that you're calling the comps were, and you know, and if you, so you gotta pick ones that did well, but you can't pick ones that did too well, because then they say to you, well, but that's a fluke. I mean, anything that's, you know, it's a category killer, as we call it. So I find the whole thing really, you know, just infuriating in some ways. Especially when you're talking about like how it's gonna sell. I mean, as an editor, that's why I'm talking to my salespeople about, you know, I want it to sell like Kate Morton meets, you know, I don't know what, but to have a kind of weird, I mean, to say, I mean, I think you can say it has the sensibility of My Sister the Serial Killer, but it has, you know, it shares a lot with the Little Paris Bookshop because it's about books. You know, I mean, I think you can put two wacko things like that together that don't seem to go together, if you explain why. But I mean, and I mean in a phrase, you know, it has sensibility of serial killer, but it's about books, like, you know, The Cat Who Wrote Books is about books or something. Made that up. There is a book called that, but I don't know what it's about. I don't know what it's like. So, you know, I mean, I think there are two things. There are many more than two things, but there's sensibility, you know, tone and sensibility, and then there's subject matter. And I think if you have one comp for one and one comp for the other, and you marry them, I think people can follow that. I think if you get more than about two, people start going, you know, it's Philip Roth meets Adriana Trigiani. What?
That's a good question and a helpful answer. I actually just realized Susan Lipinski. I am so sorry, I skipped right over you. I don't know my alphabet. Where's Susan?
Here I am.
I'm sorry.
No, fine, just fine. It gave me a little more time to pull myself together here. So, hi, Sarah. Hi, Jean.
Hi. So what do you want to ask Sarah with this special connection here?
Yes, very special to me. This is my fourth book, and, you know, I'm just wild about working on it and making it happen. It's a memoir of love and loss. I'm pulled back into life by my favorite lake in Maine. So it has, I think it shares some territory with H is for Hawk by Helen MacDonald. I think there are even some of the same issues that Elizabeth Strout dealt with in O. William, way grief changes a family forever. I have sold a number of excerpts of this manuscript, and I've come to decide that the best possible format that I can imagine is to do a collection of interconnected stories. So my question for you is, I'm not Jennifer Egan. Is that something that I could, you know, think about doing?
Yeah, I mean, so it's fiction, and it would be linked stories.
Or is it memoir?
It's memoir.
Oh,
It's
a
memoir.
memoir.
So it's creative nonfiction, really, because
You
I've
know,
wanted it
I mean,
to read like.
I don't know that I would pitch it and say this is linked stories or linked essays, or I would just say it's a memoir. I mean,
Okay.
I think you have a lot more freedom with memoirs to play with the form a little bit. So I wouldn't, there is a little bit, I will confess, when I get something that says a novel in stories, it's a little bit of a, because stories are very hard to sell to readers and also to publishers and also to readers. And so I kind of would rather not make a big fuss about that. Let the reader figure it out as they're reading, that they're fragments. I mean, I hate all that. I find that stuff pretentious. It's like a memoir in fragments, a memoir in pastiche, or some baloney like that. I really
Right.
It's just a
It
memoir.
sends up a warning to you, that kind of language.
Right.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I
So
appreciate
it
that.
sounds like do it and just call it a memoir and not
Yeah, exactly.
Right, not
Let somebody
labeling
else worry about that.
going in. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Okay, so next we have Terry from Lano. Hey, Terry.
There we
Can
go.
yeah, there you go.
There she is. Hi, Terry.
Hi, I'm tickled to have this opportunity. I could tell right away that everybody has far more experience than I do. So I'm coming to this as the youngster at the table. I write all the time. I write for paper and a magazine. So I don't really have to look to get published. They hire me, I write stories and they publish them. So
Right.
to have to like find a publisher, that's something I really didn't even think about when I started writing this story. The one thing that I am worried about, so there was a little bit about bringing it all together. It's kind of time travel of Brigadoon. The story part is sort of Sweet Home Alabama-ish. The energy of Romancing the Stone with a little of cowboys and Indian searchers, because it's a time travel. And my concern is that as far as the pitch goes, is that this is a cowboys and Indian story, and there are Indians attacking. And in this day and age, I'm concerned that that's already a faux pas, or it'll be a turnoff, and people say, oh, we don't write stuff like that anymore, or we don't publish stuff like that anymore. The twist being that it's really more a lesson in making assumptions or not making assumptions, because it turns out the end of the story, the end of the mystery, that the Indians aren't actually the bad guys. But I don't want to say that like in the beginning, because that's the whole, that's the meat of the story. So I guess I could say it in a pitch, but I don't want to say it to people who are going to read it, because then they already know the ending before they started, and that's part of the mystery.
This is a tricky one, because the reality is, I'm making an assumption now looking at you. You are a white woman, and you're going to be writing about Native American people and behavior and history and behavior, right? Among other things. I mean, that's not right. I mean, that's tricky in today's world. That is tricky. That it turns out that, basically you're playing with the stereotype. Is that right? I mean, you're sort of.
Yes and no. The story does have some truth to it. I mean, my great grandfather wrote a story for the paper in 1870 about a friend of his who was captured by Indians. This was quite common in German settlements in the 1850s and 60s, that the Indians would sweep in and take the children and raise them as Indians, servants or slaves. The boys got the better end of the deal. Several actually, they called the captured, preferred the Indian life. And when they were found and brought back to white civilization, they really wanted to stay with the Indian tribes.
Right.
So
isn't that the Daniel Boone story, and isn't that the famous book?
The Captured.
Sorry?
Scott Zesch wrote a story called The Captured.
Yeah, well, but I published a book last year called The Taking of Jemima Boone, which involved Jemima Boone was Daniel Boone's daughter, so it was a kind of feminist retelling of things that happened in Boonesboro during the Revolution. But one of the stories that was it became the basis for the James Fenimore Cooper novel, which I am now forgetting the name of, as usual, about a white
Last of the Mohicans. Last of the Mohicans. Right?
Thank you very much. It was taken. Daniel Day-Lewis is all I can think.
Hawkeye,
right? Was taken by I forget the tribal nation, but anyway, and became sort of chose it and called the woman the matriarch Ma and the father. Anyway, I mean, it's tricky. I honestly don't know what to tell you because that book, Jemima Boone, was written by a guy named Matthew Pearl, who was a white guy who wrote the Dante Club, and he's written a lot of sort of historical fiction. This was long form narrative nonfiction, and he was very careful to not write. He wouldn't write cliche anyway. He's really a wonderful writer, but very careful to not have it be sort of the Union scalp people and white people were all innocent. I mean, he was very, very careful to balance out what he was talking about, and he still had some trouble with it. So, I don't know exactly. I mean, we published it, and I would publish him again on the same subject. But we were very, very careful. There are people that you could hire that call themselves sensitivity readers who are very knowledgeable about, language and, sort of racial stereotypes. And, we try to be careful about what we say. I mean, it is tricky as a white person to get a book contract in which you are going to be writing about violence. Write, I don't say negatively, but write complicatedly about what's going on in the mind of a person of color. It's a problem.
Yeah. Okay. That is
And like I said, when you finally reach the ending, you realize.
Right, but you can't tell it, you can't.
Right.
I mean, there may be a way, I mean, and it's not that there's nobody who will publish it, it's just that that's going to be the big problem, and that there is maybe some way for you to write it. I have a friend recently who was trying to write a book about a group of Syrian women during the fall, during the reign of Assad, and she is a white woman who has a lot of friends in the Middle East and did spend time in Syria, and she knew what she was talking about, but at the end of the book, she was introducing a German woman, who sort of had been watching it all, had been the kind of secret kind of friend. And I said, you got to bring her forward and do it all in her voice, because you can't be writing in the voice of these people. I'm not saying if it's right or it's not right, and I'm not saying it always works, but this is a real issue. So.
And this is something that is obviously has been happening a lot. This debate, these discussions from American Dirt to all that stuff, right? So this is a really we could do a whole seminar about this. So I do want to move on, but Terry, I understand your concerns, and but you're hearing it from the horse's mouth. Not that you are like a horse. I don't like that term. Anyway, but we'll get to other. You'll have a chance for other questions. Liz Visser, what's your question?
Okay, it ties in a little bit to what Terry just asked. So my novel ends with a pretty significant twist at the end, and I didn't know if that is something that I would include in a pitch to an agent or an editor. Obviously, I can't sell a book to readers that way because I wouldn't want to give away the ending, but I didn't know if it's appropriate to do so when pitching it.
Is it a novel? Sorry.
It's a novel.
It's a novel, and it's like a thriller?
It's kind of a mix of genres. It's about an Iraq War veteran who finds redemption on the Pacific Crest Trail. So it's kind of action adventure. It has some women's fiction elements, some horror.
Well, most agents will ask you at the beginning for 50 pages or whatever they'll ask you for, and if they like 25, I don't know, I think it's 50. And if they like it, then they'll ask to see the whole novel. I mean, novels, as opposed to nonfiction, novels are expected to be complete. So an editor is going to read to the end and see the ending, and make a decision about it then. So I don't think you need to, I mean, you can certainly allude to it in your pitch letter to the agent, and the agent will allude to it in their pitch letter to any editor saying, and then this and this and this, and it's about this and this and this, and then it takes a surprising twist into the area of science fiction that blah, 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 I mean, they'll allude to it without giving it away.
Okay.
Nobody, any editor will want to have read the whole book before they buy it, especially if it's a first-time novelist. So, so
Okay.
they'll get there.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
Amy from Arlington, Virginia.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Thanks so much for being here. Unlike a lot of people here, I'm writing fiction. And I just wanted to kind of pick your brain on like one or two really common mistakes you see fiction writers making that might, be the difference between you taking on a book and not.
Well, the biggest mistake I see first-time fiction writers making is everything that I'm sure you have, heard and read before. Is, too much telling, not enough showing, not taking the time or not enough what we call world building, where we really want to sort of understand who these people are and what's going on and where it is. And being too didactic in historical novels, sometimes I feel like the history is showing, the research is showing, like your slip is showing, your research is showing. It just like feels like I'm being educated and taught something, which I don't want to feel in a novel. I want to feel like I learned something when I get done, but I don't want to feel like somebody was sitting there going, now I'm going to tell you about the history of whatever. Why you take on things that you do is so weird and personal. And yeah, there are certain kinds of books that sell, or there are eras where it's always the unreliable narrator, or it's always the that there are kind of fashions in fiction writing. But by the time you sort of, either as an editor and certainly as a writer, I would never counsel a writer to figure out what the trend is and write to it, because first of all, it's not going to be organic and it's not going to feel real. And I get a lot of things like that. This is just like Girl on the Train. Well, I didn't really like Girl on the Train all that much anyway. And there have been 47 Girls on the Train since, most of which you haven't heard of, new work. If you think you figured out what the trend is, that's nice, but by the time your book is done and out there, it's going to be like in the rearview mirror. Right. That's something that people do a lot.
Okay.
And this is a good segue, Sarah. So what, not that I want to know what the trend is, I'm not asking that, but what are the kinds of things that you feel passionate about, what you're looking for,
well, I love humor. I love something that, not so much, knock down Three Stooges humor, obviously, but like wit, I guess is the word I would say. I will not say the words Nora Ephron, but that's what I mean. And, I'm publishing a book in November called We All Want Impossible Things, which is a very sad and hilarious novel about two best friends for life. They're women in their 40s. One of them is in hospice and the other one is taking care of her. I know it sounds like a real laugh riot. It is really one of the most moving and hilarious books that I've ever read. She really, under the writer's name is Catherine Newman. And she really, it's also it's very autobiographical, clearly. From the first page, I thought this woman's just been through something. But it is, where they're also publishing it in England, where they're calling it The Fault in Our Stars for Adults, if you know that book. It's about teenagers. And somebody was comparing it to the old movie Terms of Endearment. I mean, it's a tearjerker, but it's also really, really witty and sophisticated.
What is it? It's Catherine Newman is the writer. What's the name of the book?
The name of the book is We All Want Impossible Things.
And when should that be out?
That's coming out in November.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to get her for.
It's really, you know, I love all my children equally. I love all my books equally, but I like extra specially love this one.
Oh, wow. So we will definitely look out for that.
Check it out.
So we have the time for a few more questions. And I know that, was it Sadie, you were asking, yeah, your follow-up question, because you about the whole sensitivity, because your book has some abortion issues in it. So do you want to talk just a little bit about that question?
Yeah, I was sort of following up on what Terry said. So when I started writing my book 4 years ago, which was really a exploration of a traumatic abortion I had when I was in college, I really had no idea that Roe v. Wade was going to be gutted. And now, and part of what I'm doing in my book is to explore what might have happened if I hadn't had that abortion. You know, not only would I not have experienced the trauma of the abortion, but I'd have a child. And so that the book, that's why it sort of began as memoir and turned into fiction, because I decided I was more interested in what might have happened than I was in what happened. So, but now I'm like anguished about the fact that, and maybe like by the time I actually finish this book, down the road in another 4 years, it won't matter because, you know, people will have their choice back. But I do feel anguished about putting a book out that is sort of making the suggestion that abortion can be traumatic and could be a mistake. And, you know, I have a lot of ambivalence now that, you know, it's the story I've invested in, so I'm going to keep going with it. But
Well,
I just
let me
wonder
ask you a
your
question.
response.
You have ambivalence about it because you are basically, your politics are pro-choice, but you're saying in the book that you have misgivings. Is that right?
Well, I'm exploring the idea that this person maybe shouldn't have had that abortion.
Right. Right.
I mean, should I not worry about this? Because
Yeah, I
it's
think
like
should
you
not
said.
worry about it. I mean, I think, you know, so all the the fear is that the pro-life people will grab this and say, see,
Yeah, but ew.
see, yeah, maybe, but they'd have to read, you know, they'd have to read it first. They'd have to, you know, and I mean, I've had a lot of stuff happen, which I won't go into detail, but I've published a lot of books about World War II and about the Holocaust. And if you say certain things, I published this book about Anne Frank that came out a few months ago. And because of certain things that we said in the book, we were accused of being anti-Semites, and I'm Jewish, and we were accused of fostering anti-Semitism because we had allowed as how one of the people who may have betrayed the Frank family was Jewish. And I knew that people were going to be upset about it. I knew that Jewish organizations would be upset, and a lot of Jews would be upset. I was upset. It was upsetting. It didn't occur to me that this was going to, what people were saying was that by publishing this book, we were giving the anti-Semites, you know, ammunition.
Right.
Like, I still don't completely get how we were doing that, but that's what people said.
That's what the worry is. Right.
Right, because we were willing to say that all Jews were not perfect, right? And that was, you know, it was, I expected some backlash to this book, but I did not expect this at this rate. So I would publish the book again tomorrow, screw 'em, you know, I mean,
Okay.
you know, I believe.
So just keep going. Keep
that's what
going. Don't
that's
worry
my-
about it.
Right.
Yeah,
Tell your story. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
good.
Thank you.
And Maggie, you had a follow-up question.
Is this the question here about the art?
Yeah, just curious about all the various aspects because I feel like I know a lot about what agents do now, and I don't know nearly enough about what editors do from start to finish.
Okay, well, it's different with every book. I mean, some books, an agent calls you up and says, I have this book, I know you're gonna love it. And I say, yes, I do. And I am senior enough that I just basically have to give it to my boss, who's the publisher. And most of the time, I mean, well, not all the time, but if I give it to him and I say, I love this book, I want to do this book is the greatest. Once in a blue moon, he'll say to me, really? I don't think it's that good. Are you sure? Mostly he says, okay. But then I say, well, how much money can I give him? You know, and then he'll say, you know, whatever. And then I have a sense of how much he really wants, you know, how much he's just going along with me. And I'm, you know, well, if you can get it for $5, you know, sure, you got my, you know, but if it's any more than that, okay. But you know, it's good. I don't have to, but I try to get people on the marketing and business side of the house to at least read it, or at least read my pitch for it, or listen to me talk about it, because it doesn't all from because it helps to have the people in marketing to say, oh yeah, this is, you know, the reps, people going in the stores to say, yes, I can do this. This is something that we know how to sell. Doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily buy it, and it doesn't mean that, but so I do try to get other opinions. I don't have to necessarily. The younger editors have to go through a few more levels for, you know, obvious reasons, I guess. In terms of looking at your question here, some books are much more complicated. I get it, 7 other editors and 7 other houses get it, and I express interest, and the agent says, well, there are 6 other people who want it, and so we're going to have an auction next Thursday, and you know, so you know, come with your best offer, or we'll do it in rounds, which is like everybody goes up $5,000, you know, for days until somebody stops, like musical chairs. Sometimes it's not like that. Sometimes it's really, you know, this is for you exclusively. I think you're going to love this. If you don't love it, then I'll take it out wide. I'll take it to everybody else. And in terms of the book, once it's acquired, it's really varied. I mean, if I acquire a book, I have a conversation with the author usually before I acquire it, and sort of have a general sense of what I would want the author to do to it. How, you know, the ending doesn't quite work. I think you're going to need to change this. See if they're amenable, because some people are like, not, and some people say they are, and then they're not. But then you're sort of stuck. And you know, so then if we acquire it, I sit down and I do a very close read and send them real notes. You know, page 7 needs to be is repetitive of page 6, and and then we work from there. Some writers want to hear, you know, from you every week. Some writers want to send you 3 pages at a time. Fine. Some want to send you the whole manuscript when it's done. Fine. It just depends.
I have a question, and I think that's probably on a lot of minds. But what kind of I mean, for first time fiction, first time memoir, whatever, what kind of advances are we talking about these days?
It is completely, you know, up in the air. I mean, there are, I mean, you know, some agents are really good at stirring everybody up, and so then there's a big, you know, there's an auction, or they, without lying, supposedly, they, you know, play people off each other. You know, they don't say, you know, well, Susie over here offered 100,000, so you, but it's, you know, well, got a lot of interest, and you know, so and so, you know, is friends with so and so and can get him as a blurb, or you know, I mean, they sell it. I mean, that's their job. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot said and written about these, you know, 6 and 7 figure advances. And the reason there's a lot, and I'm responsible for writing about it in my previous life at Publishers Weekly. And I'm a little sorry because, you know, most books, I don't know, I don't have the statistic in front of me, but of all the books that I buy, yes, if out of 20 books, 2 of them I might have paid over $300,000 for, maybe 3 of them I paid over $300,000 for. The sweet spot is probably between $100,000 and $150,000, but I pay a lot. I pay $40,000 for a lot of books. I mean, I pay as little as $25,000 for certain books too. And it's not necessarily a question of how much I like the book, but it's a question of how much competition there is for it, and how much, you know, I have sort of made a little bit of a specialty of buying books that are little books that I work to try to make into big books. I mean, Bookworm is a book I did not pay a lot of money for, but it was so out there and it was so, came to me in such a roundabout way, and I loved it so much. And the author and I had a conversation. I mean, I don't think it mattered what I offered her. I mean, we were just so like, this is what we're going to do. I mean, we were so like in it. And you know, a writer makes money on the back end. If we're right about Bookworm and she got a small advance, the book, you know, sells a lot, she can make money anyway. So you just don't know.
And do you often speak to the writer before you make an offer? I mean, I did. Yeah, I sold a memoir and I spoke to about 3 different editors before.
Right. Almost always.
And what are you looking for in those conversations?
Well, partly whether the person is amenable to making whatever changes, or, you know, would you be willing to change the title, or I'm not sure about this. Is this the right way into the story? You know, I mean, you know, and also just to sort of get to know them a little bit. I mean, it's a very intimate relationship when you, in most cases, I mean, a couple of things I bought that are in translation and I never even really talked to the writer, but for the most part, you know, if somebody's writing a memoir, you're going to be like learning a lot about them. You got to figure out whether you know, you as an editor want to work with them, and they as a writer, like, you know, want to be, you know, telling you the story, and want to sit there and say, well, really, do you want to say this about your mother? I mean, I had this with Justine Cowan, the Secret Life of Dorothy Soames, where there are things, she was very hard on her mother, and I was like, you know, are you sure you want to say this? And, you know, she would say yes or no. And I would say, I think maybe you don't want to say this because your sister's going to sue you, or, you know, whatever. I mean, you know, so there's a lot to discuss. So it's good to know some of that in advance.
Yeah.
Get a sense of it.
That's cool. And I think maybe we have one more question. I like this one from Liz Visser. You have any advice for new authors about how to choose between independent and traditional publishing? Actually, probably my question is, I don't know the difference between independent. Sorry.
Do you mean by independent, do you mean self-publishers, or do you mean
Yeah, I mean self-publishing.
Yeah.
Especially for, you know, for authors who are older like us.
Right.
You know.
Right. You know, self-publishing had a bad, you know, used to be a bad, you know, have a bad rap. I think it's much more acceptable to have them, and to do self-publishing. I mean, I think another question is independent publishers versus, as meaning small publishers that are not owned by conglomerates, like here, for example, Grey Wolf or Bloomsbury, which is actually owned by a big British publisher, but, you know, that's not Random House, or, you know, Harper Collins, where it's a much more sort of corporate mentality and much more focused on the bottom line. I mean, I think it is really worth looking at publishers who are not, you know, you're not going to get as large an advance, but, you know, as I just said, you know, there aren't that many advances that are that large anyway, and you may get more attention from a smaller independent house than you're going to get. Now, this is not self-publishing, but this is the Bloomsburys or the Grey Wolves or the Sarah Vans or whatever, who, you know, publish 5 or 10 or 15 books a year, you may not get a great big advance, but you may get a lot more attention than if you go to somebody who your book is number 20 on the list.
Yeah, and Nancy asked, what about academic presses?
I don't know. It's really a different thing, and I don't know a lot about them. I mean, I know that a lot of academic presses are trying to be a little bit more tradey. In your book, Nancy, might be actually an academic press book because it's kind of the history and sociology of sex work along with a memoir. You know, the university presses are, you know, are doing stuff like that. I mean, so, you know, and some are better, you know, known to be better than others. I don't know, in University of the Yale University Press is supposed to be a particularly good one. I think.
I had heard that you don't need agents for academic presses all the time.
I don't know that. I don't. That's
Okay.
right, but I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
And several questions about word count. I know I said that was gonna be the last question, but I saw that I hadn't addressed that. It feels like would be hard to say what.
Yeah, I mean, I published a book that's 800 pages, and I really wanted it to be shorter, but it was the kind of book. It's about a girl growing up in the 12th century. It's Eleanor of Aquitaine.
Oh, right.
It's great, but it's long, very long, and you know, there was no way that book was going to be 300 pages, no matter what. And you know, that was just the chance we took. I still think it should have been 700 instead of 800, but the writer was started off at closer to 900, so I, you know, we split the difference. It's hard to I mean, one of the most successful books of last year was very long. It's the Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois, which my colleague Erin Wicks did at Harper. And you know, they were all over her. She doesn't work there anymore, but they were all over her. You know, how can you publish a book that's 900 pages long? And she wouldn't cut it. And you know, yes, she was right. I mean, she was right in the sense of, you know, it needed. I don't. Maybe it could have been 100 pages shorter, but part of it, the point of this book was the size of it. I mean, a book needs to be as long as it needs to be. I know that's a kind of a lousy answer, but it's really the truth. I mean, you can't. Yeah, I mean, you know, short books are in some ways easier to sell. Tattooist of Auschwitz is very short. One of the things reviewers said on Amazon and Goodreads was, you know, I read it in one sitting, and I thought, is that good? You know, I don't know. Is that good? So, I mean, it was good. They bought it. A lot of people bought it and read it in one sitting. I always like a book that's long because I feel like I'm getting my money's worth or something, you know, it takes me 3 weeks and, you know, I can lose myself in it. Depends on the book.
And I keep adding questions, but I do have another question. So I want to know, and I hope other people want to know this too. How do you define the difference between literary fiction and just fiction?
You know, it's such bull that you know, we all do it. You know, it's upmarket literary fiction, it's, you know, commercial book club, blah blah blah. I don't know. I mean, you know, I guess W.E.B. Du Bois was literary fiction. You know, it's less linear. It's you know, many different storylines in a non-linear way. I mean, is that what literary is? Maybe. You know, if something is, I mean, why is Stephen King considered a serious writer and John Grisham is not? I mean, I don't really know exactly. They're both very good at what they do. You know, I mean, we all know, you know, it's that sort of porn thing of like, you know, I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it. I mean, we all know like what's, you know, junk or trash, you know, or, you know, a throwaway
beach read, a little beach read, would that be considered?
Beach read, right? But lots of them are, I mean, why is Emma Straub a more sophisticated beach read than somebody else? I'm not thinking of who right now, but you know, it's kind of a phony baloney.
Yeah, because I'm reading Maggie O'Farrell's new book, The Marriage Portrait, because I just think she's just
I'm
amazing.
sorry?
Maggie O'Farrell, who wrote
Yeah.
Hamnet, and I'm reading the new one of hers. And it's obviously very, I guess the quality of the writing is just.
Right, right. I mean, but I mean, I think, I mean, Stephen King, the quality of the writing, I don't know, I mean, I love Stephen King, but is the quality of his writing that much better than the quality of John Grisham's writing? I don't know that, I don't know them, either of them well enough to know, right? There's Emma Stroke. So, I mean, I think it's a kind of a made up thing, to
Yeah.
just, it's hair splitting.
Yeah. Anybody else have just something burning, like they're gonna be upset if they don't get their question asked? Any of our 12 here?
Hey, Jeannie, it's Liz. And we can take this offline if you want. I just, for the pitch in October, I have an elevator pitch. I can do comps. I feel like I've got about 2 minutes.
Well, I answered that in your I answered that, yeah, in your thing, but it's a good, if you don't mind, I'll just take it from here and tell you guys what we'll do the next time. Is that okay, Liz?
Yeah, no, that's great. It's just like, are there other things that we need to be thinking about when we're pitching?
Okay, so yes, we can ask Sarah this, but just for you guys, for how the format will work for the next one, I want to give you at least like 5 minutes. I mean, maybe Sarah will say shorter than that, to kind of to explain what it is, why it is important, why this book somebody should like this book, why it's gonna sell, all of that. And then chance for Sarah to go back to you and ask questions and give you the feedback on, whether it's a great, whether she thinks it has legs or what might improve it. Sarah, what does that sound like? How many minutes would you like for them to be actual pitching to you?
Well, I mean, so each person has how many minutes?
About 10 minutes. So
yeah, so I would say that the pitch should really be about 3 minutes, because then I'm gonna have a question, no more than 3 minutes, I would say, because I'm gonna have a question, and then you're gonna answer the question, and that's gonna be another 3 minutes right there, and then whatever thoughts I have after that, right? So I would say 3 minutes. I'd like to answer Yvonne's question here before we have to go, because it comes up a lot. I've been fortunate to have a good number of literary agents request my material. Should I send my package to everyone at the same time? A very, very good question. Technically, you're not supposed to do that, because you're supposed to give everybody an opportunity to read it. I am of the opinion that it's a jungle out there, and you should just I mean, I wouldn't send it to 10 people at once. I would pick my top. I mean, you are lucky to have that many people interested. And I would pick 2 or 3 and send it to them, and then follow up with them like in about a month's time. And if those 3 don't come across, then go to the next 3. I mean, you know what, if you have, good for you, if you have 3 agents who want to, then that's a nice problem to have.
And you should tell them though, right? You should let them know.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think so. I mean, I think so. I mean, I guess so. I mean, as you can see, I don't know that I think so. I mean, agents, if they're really interested, they're going to get back to you. And at that point, if you say, well, then you have a little beauty contest with another agent, and you say, well, then you get back to the other agent, you say, hey, I have ICM over here is interested. You conduct your own little auction. It's okay. If they want it, they want it.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. And let's all hope that in the future we have that kind of problem, right?
Right, exactly.
This is what we're praying for. So, Liz, did that help you with your?
That was Yvonne who had that question.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, I meant, Yvonne, but Liz, about the pitching. That's what I meant.
Yes, thank you. That was terrific. Just wanted to make sure I hit it. And so, yeah.
And I will send out to everybody here. I will send out a link to the recording so you can go back over it. All of you, those who are participating and those who are observing. I will also, for those who are participating, kind of lay out what we just talked about, how it's going to work,
Right.
so that you can feel prepared. And last time, the participants did a little Facebook group and kind of talked to each other about it. I'm just saying that if you want to do that, you can. It was very dear to me, and it also just reinforced that idea that women just you do these things differently. It wasn't like a zero-sum game. Like if you get something, if she likes yours, she's not gonna like mine. So it was all let's help each other. So that's the right spirit. Huh?
I've got to go. I've got somebody here.
Okay,
So,
okay.
So
Yeah.
I will see you all soon.
October 2nd, and we'll be all in touch. You'll be hearing from me. Sarah, thank you so much. You have a
Thank
great
you. Nice to
evening,
meet you
everyone.
all. See you soon.
All
Okay.
right, take care.
Thank you,
Bye.
Sarah. Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you. Bye-bye.